Peggy is going to join us in a few minutes. So I call the meeting to order at 6:35. Let's start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Uh, Minutes, I figure out the minutes from I have the minutes up on the screen here now from last month. Pretty straightforward. Share them. That will do. Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes. So, Dave, any comments or updates on the minutes, adjustments?
Second.
All right, so I can have a second. Yes. Okay. All right, without any comments, is all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
You opposed? Thank you. We do not have any bills from Intenosi or TPA for this month, so I just have that as a standard item on the thing, so just I'll just let everybody know where we are. I will start with the Memorial Hall update. Really, there's no update on Memorial Hall. What we're really doing is really been focusing on the chapel and the kind of whole historic area there. So I'd like to bring up some slides on that. I can. These are very, I'm going to see if I can share this. Basically, what we're looking at from a historic standpoint is, oh, that's interesting. I don't know why it didn't come up on the big screen here. Is there a thing maybe I'm not hitting the right thing yet? Ah,
There you go.
okay. Sorry, I'm not as good a technologist. So as we've started looking at this and we've had several discussions and we've also met with the folks from the Charlotte Everett's archives this in the last week and a half, and as well as people from the Historical Society. And really the advice we received from those meetings was that we really want to look at this more holistically from Lee Academy all the way to Deacon John Gray's house, because they're all historic buildings. And so basically you got the Lee Academy, Memorial Hall, Powder House, Chapel, Academy, and Deacon John Gray's. And all as kind of a historic corridor. And part of, and Antonosi's been involved with this, and they're really conscientious of the historical kind of value of the fronts of the building and the kind of preservation and the kind of the whole kind of historical context of trying to deal with that. So we've been looking at those buildings as a whole. Obviously, we've looked at Memorial Hall. very closely, and bringing it back to its original design, if you will, as a more of a common space, theater, ballroom, a multi-function facility. I have a lot more information to share around that as well, because we have also completed a financial forecast of the operations of Memorial Hall, if it was a theater and functions, as well as the economic impact. And I'll share that in a minute. But so that became the anchor, if you will, one of the anchors. Then we've looked at the chapel. The original discussions we've had over the last month or two have been, can we put the archives in the chapel along with the Welcome Center and kind of make it more of a museum? That's not going to work. There are a couple of reasons. By going through the archives and understanding what it is, the weight, just all the materials they have in the vault, and it's probably way beyond what you could do for the in the chapel. It would be very difficult, I think. In addition, trying to make that fireproof and basically a fine arts library, in essence, is what you have to be making, because some of our historical documents go back to the 1600s. So it would be extremely hard. So we really felt that, and sitting down with the folks from the archives, they liked the idea of having some sort of galleries type space where things could be displayed and electronics could happen, not manned. That'd be like self-service kind of thing that you could go into the Welcome Center and do that. We also went through the Welcome Center in the chapel in detail. We crawled up into the attic and crawled all through the space. And we do think that we could actually raise this front area here, which is this area here, that would be open. So we would vault that ceiling so that this area here would be more of an open group space for more of a meetings and use, chamber use, as well as public use. We have the chamber's office storage, and then we have shared space and other workrooms up on the second floor or the back of the building that we'd retain. So that's the kind of general concept now of the chapel, where it would still be open that way, not closed. That leaves us though with the issue of where do we put the archives? And so we actually went through, looked at Academy, and we have an idea here for Academy as one of the options, as an alternative for the archives and other functions, and that would be to remove 2/3 of the building, basically. Just keep the original part of the building that was built in the early 1900s. It's about 15,000 square feet of space. It's also where the mechanicals are and a lot of the kind of core guts of the building are, so we could actually maintain it. You'd knock down the remaining part of the building, and so you preserve at the staircases, so you'd have access to all the floors. We could accommodate an elevator. We could accommodate the archives on the second floor here, as you can see, and that would be quite, and it would actually expand their space. They're really packed with the amount of space they have now. They have about 800-900 square feet. They're really on top of everything. So their space is really, and if we were going to really embrace the archives as the historical value, kind of keeping in this historical corridor, we think makes sense, but also giving them more space and areas to grow makes a degree of sense.
David, this is a recommendation, but this is an analysis based on Antonassi advancing this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
the origin of it is.
Yeah. So we looked at it and said, as an option in the event, depending on what happens, we don't know what's going to happen with Academy. Alternative to knocking it down or building a hotel might be this as a kind of a halfway option. you know, that's,
Split the baby.
yeah, we could split the baby a little bit here. You know, this would open up a lot more, community space on the lower level, bathrooms, rec space for people to, you know, if they need to get away from the green, from an event or something like that, they can congregate there. Could really open up the kind of restrooms that we just don't have in the green area, as well. Obviously an elevator in the building would accommodate up and down all the spaces. We're estimating, and then basically I just threw a number at this, which was the same square footage of, if you take the $26 million for Academy, and it really wasn't that much, but I inflated it a little bit and divided by the square foot, it was $700 a square foot, and I just applied that to the 15,000 square feet to get a ballpark idea. That's all that is. It's a really rough idea, just to kind of get a.
That is a covered demolition.
No, but in the building of the park, we accommodated that. We put the demolition and the building of the rebuilding the background spaces of park would be, we accommodate that there. So that was part of the ideas. The alternative would be if this doesn't work, then probably the archives would either come here to the town campus or potentially be housed in some of the excess space we still have at Jeffrey. So those are the two other options. Certainly their desire is to be closer to the area. Now this is kind of a geographic idea of how you would lay it out. Here, this would be the amphitheater and the seating area and the park area. Here, you have some expanded parking. This is roughly around a $3 million outside thing, and then we'd add the demolition for the 2/3 to the back of that number. So we're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $16 million to do the whole job. With the front redone and the demolition and the park. Order of magnitude. You know, so that.
Forgive me, but Lee Academy is also known as, is that another name?
Historical Society.
Okay, got it.
That little white building.
Yep, all right.
Yeah, it's right here. It's this, the little white building right here. That's where the Historical Society is. Here's Memorial Hall and the Powder House Chapel here. The Academy building, and then over just off the slide here is the Deacon John Gray's house. So,
Okay, thanks.
so basically we have a nice corridor of historic buildings that really frame the street, frame the front.
You know, David, too, is that entire quarter, I know there is a National Registry of Historic Places designation for somewhere in the downtown, and I know Academy is part of that. Are all these other properties included?
Memorial Hall's on the historic register, and so is Czech. And I'm not sure if Academy is on the historic.
It
It
is.
is. So all these buildings, yeah. Well,
So
the
they're all-
Academy has no investment at this stage, but it probably would be, probably qualify. So.
But they're all included.
We're thinking, yeah, that as a focus on historical preservation as a concept, I think that it's really opens up for potential grants and potential fundraising opportunities. I should note that this does not touch any of the playing fields. In our community presentations we've made, we've heard from several people how important those playing fields are not to be disturbed. For various things from JCs and baseball and carnivals and recreation and all the other kind of things that happen up there. So, I think this and this layout here puts some covered observation seating for for the playing field areas as well. And it solves our issue of parking in the area here more than adequate. We have some extra parking on the green, but and also right here where the basketball court is now. So that's the kind of concept that we're dealing with here as an option.
Has this been presented to the public?
No,
Okay.
no, tonight, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has not been presented to the public.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that, obviously this, the academy was originally not part of the charge here, and I understand that we now have to think of it, we're trying to think of it more holistically, because you're looking at all these other historic buildings. And there's an option if we decided not to demolish, right, as part of the concept, right?
Or if it does get demolished, maybe it's another building site that can be made in a historical context there for that. But, what drove this was when we went through the archives and realized that it would work in the chapel, then it says, all right, where can it go? And so that kind of triggered this concept for Academy, but it also triggered us to look at here at the town campus as well as Jeffrey. So we have a couple different options for the archive right now. But this is certainly from the archive standpoint, this would be the most desirable, having next to the chapel, next to that, kind of that was sort of.
I think as you, and we can talk about more about this with the plan, I feel like this should be like a separate category, just concepts for Academy. If the town does not decide to proceed with the DOI process, here's another option that would fit in with all the other. Right, because I know right now you kind of listed as a, anyway, we can talk more about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how, because this is.
How it gets presented.
I just don't want the whole plan being all of a sudden about this again. You know what I mean? Like, we have this great plan that's got a lot of other positive things that we want to go through and prioritize.
Right.
So, that's all. Okay. And that's a piece of thinking for all these other buildings, right? That's one piece of all the other buildings.
Correct.
So where would archives go? Carve Academy back out. Explain.
Well, right now, they could fit in Jeffrey and some of those classrooms around the perimeter there. It's not as desirable,
I mean, it
obviously.
feels like archives wants to be with the historical.
They want to be in the historical buildings. Yes, they want to be in the historical space. So, there really are not a lot of great options once outside of here. It's really here at the town campus or at, and part of it, I mean, I don't think the town campus would be terrible. I mean, kind of tie it right into the main entrance where the Board of Ed entrance was. And you could open that up so that it becomes much more of a visible archive kind of space. So I think that could be a reasonable option.
Could it also be, I'd ask this really naively, could it also be possibly located at the library? Because it's got archives and rare documents to see.
I'm not sure you'd find 1,000 square feet in the library for a book space.
1,000, that's.
You're gonna need more than 1,000 square feet of space.
Yeah. To me, 1,000 feet is pretty modest. It would seem.
Well,
But
I think we would also have to talk a little more
It's the
about
size
the
of the building,
archives, what's the sustainability of the archives in the long run? I don't know a lot about the archives, to be honest, and the funding and how it works with the town, so I think we would need to figure a lot of that out and then determine what would be the best home for it.
yeah.
But clearly it's an asset, right? But it's kind of like, what is the long term? I was talking about this a little bit with the town clerk, because the archives has a lot of stuff that the town clerk doesn't have. And so should there be like a shared resource possibly for the town? Like,
I mean, I think part of this whole initiative is enhancing their digital, them being able to digitize a lot of what they have that hasn't been. It's interesting that a lot of what's in the archives have already been digitized through the Historical Society, and it's part of that. That's called Connect CT, I think that is. And you can access it online, and they got these panels. I just happened to be taking our grandchildren to Maritime Academy, and they had one of those panels. That's basically, it's about 4.5 feet high and it's about 3 feet wide, and it's a touch screen, and you can find the restaurants, or you can find the historical buildings, and a lot of that information is already on that system. So that type of a system would be our vision in the chapel building to be, for people to touch screen and kind of learn more about. And feeding the data there is really part of the key. So,
David,
yes.
just a thought. Would it be punitive if we want to go forward with the main plan that you have going forward with the academy on the side and maybe finding a temporary home for the archives until such time that academy is decided and it can move? I mean, are the archives flexible enough to maybe be placed so it doesn't ruin your domino effect on everything that's moving and being placed? And
I mean,
That's where the
good news, bad news is, the good news is that,
Jeffrey could play into.
yeah,
Right.
the time for Jeffrey and the time for the chapel and all the moves, you're probably talking 3 to 4 years from when you drop the flag before you really have to worry about where you're moving the archives to. Putting them in temporary space, I think, would be extremely difficult, given the historic nature of a lot of these materials. I mean, you'd have to build some sort of fireproof vault that's a historic, as a temporary solution. Maybe even store it in another location, another town, or another university or something that may have that kind of capacity. You'd have to find something like that to do it. But I was incredibly impressed when we went through. I mean, we spent hours going through the place with Nancy and Baston, and we also met with Pam Everett and president, and then Gerard,
Yeah.
town historian, basically, and they were very thoughtful. It's clearly everything's volunteer. I mean,
Yeah.
you just have people that are just very passionate about this, and they're working tons of hours doing great things. I mean, when we were talking about the academy, they brought out the original blueprints from the building, and they were on blue boards, and they were mounted, and the stuff they have is
Yeah.
you just have to ask, and you're amazed what you're going to find. So anyway, I just wanted to share where we were
Yeah.
with our thinking, and the biggest takeaway here is that chapel will not accommodate the
The
archives.
archives.
So that's kind of the number one piece of information that we should move forward on.
Well, I mean, the other option is what the purpose of the chapel is, too. What's the priority? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I know you've got a purpose for it, but there's a lot of conversations that can be had about priorities within uses.
Mhm.
But I think this is a framework, a starting point, right?
Yeah, and it's everything's affected when
Right. Yeah.
Madison, if Youth and Family Services moves,
Yeah.
then it opens up the
Yeah.
space, and something else can move, and then, all these things are dependent upon one another.
Yeah.
It's really more integrated. So,
I'm honestly confused here, but Peggy and help clarify things for me. Last month, this is all obviously, I mean, you and I talked briefly during the month, but this is all relatively new from our last meeting to this meeting as far as this overall historic concept and plan. And I guess to Peggy's point, I'm just concerned that what's being proposed here, candidly, I'm not supportive of it as it pertains to academy, and maybe that's why we have to carve that out. But the reason I'm not supportive is because of the fact that we have a focus, a direction that was decided upon to proceed with one of four possibilities that was presented back at the beginning of the year, and indeed one was selected. The hotel concept was selected, and I know our committee, I think, advanced at the time that the options were being considered. Correct me again if I'm wrong. That we really liked, or kind of, it was a tie for first place between the hotel concept and then the refined living concept that included housing and artisan enclave and the restaurant and the other pieces, and that it was sort of a toss up for us that when we rank ordered them, I think there was 1 point between them that separated first and second. So, and that was sort of the data then that we shared the information. To me, this is sort of like,
if I could just add one thing.
sure,
We also said at the end of it, an alternative was to do this with only keeping part of the academy and renovating it for town use. So we did incorporate that as an alternative.
fair point.
And I think that in general, our core question as a committee is whether we are committed to this area as a historical version of the town versus something that should be developed. And I think that's kind of the core question that's out there.
Sure, but if that's the case, then quite frankly, if to preserve the historic qualities. And I know you and I have talked about this, I believe the committee discussed it last month too, about the scale of everything, and does the hotel bluntly alter the scale of the surrounding properties? And that was a concern that I know was voiced. But wouldn't another option then that we should entertain, given that we had almost a tie for first place, wouldn't it be then to revisit the close runner-up? Because in that case, that one didn't increase the footprint of the building, but rather used the existing footprint in its entirety. That somehow I'm just seeing that to your point, Peg, this gets raises up again and is now viewed in the if someone unfortunately decides to blast it out on Facebook or whatever. It just, to me, causes more anxiety and confusion. What are we doing? Which way are we going? We don't know which way we're going.
Well, and that's
That's
right,
fine.
because, yeah, and I feel like, there can be a, the board of selectmen is gonna be choosing the next steps, right? We're focusing on the hotel, we're doing due diligence on the septic system, this is gonna be a community conversation, also a community decision about the hotel, right? So to me, this is more of a, okay, if the town chooses not to move
Not
forward.
to move
with
forward,
this,
I agree.
there is this other option that could be explored. Now, the board view, if you listened 6 months ago, was that the town didn't want to spend any more money, right? And so people have kind of walked away from wanting to invest in the building. So that also identifies a budget, right? So I think if we just make sure it's clear that this is just a concept that could align with all the other planning initiatives down there, right? But it's not driving, right? It's an offshoot that can happen if the town didn't proceed with the other things it's exploring. Right?
Well, and I think to that point, though, in fairness, then in balance, it would seem that again, if direction right now is hotel, this is an alternative. Maybe in fairness, we should also restate the fact that there was yet a third option we had, and that was the other narrowly the close runner-up in the plan, which called for utilization, but nothing further.
That was only from our committee. I'm not sure if all the others had that same.
No, from our committee, but isn't this from our committee?
This is from our committee.
Well, then we could certainly include that as an option B, since we already liked it and almost had it as our top choice when we made recommendations to the board of selectmen. I'm just saying, I think we could.
From a historic standpoint, I would agree. I think
Right. It doesn't detract.
The other alternative really kind of fits in much closer with the historic context, and they even, maybe.
What I think arguably, your point, either could.
Putting the archives in there still within the context of that kind of a plan, but I don't know.
And I think the only other comment I think would be, it seems though, again, not to get focused on academy here, but for one more moment, it seems if we're looking for the reuse of that and concerned about public investment, further public investment in the building, then could we make some comment about possible reuses? Could also include for-profit businesses. Could it include the restaurant? Could it include some artists enclave similar to what was proposed? Could it include other things besides it being strictly a visitor center or whatever the vision is there? And to that point further, I noticed in reading over the plans, and it talked again about the possibility, at least as an option, of Academy having an event space and stage. But wouldn't that be, to me, that would seem very duplicative of what our vision is for Memorial Town Hall.
Yeah, we were thinking that this main floor, the first floor, would have some sort of commercial opportunity there that could be outsourced.
So that would be the event space as opposed to,
The event space wouldn't be.
The event
Centered
space
around
is
the
in Memorial
stage.
Hall.
wait, this is Academy, I'm sorry, maybe,
Yeah, no,
what's the pink space?
The pink space is event space, so.
Same
Okay.
background of the
I'm
stage.
confused with the
Different
event
settings.
space and event space.
Can you clarify that is the intent for the event space to be centered around the stage, or is the stage gone?
The stage, it may or may not be there, depending on what, if you want to put this got driven more from the proposals from the expression of interest. This is where people wanted to think about restaurants or some sort of common kind of event space or something like that, a small space. I think some sort of restaurant or market idea works very well in this, on this level of the floor. And that's kind of why we designed it, or just kind of put some big blocks there to think about it that way.
It just seems to be competing with city building 2 doors up the way we've got it planned.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, that's a 200 seat. I mean, this is more kind of like for cafe or a restaurant or something along those lines. And
Maybe it's the way maybe it's the way you define it as
Yeah,
event space.
we didn't, we wanted to leave it very flexible.
I saw that in theater.
Some sort of commercial type use, outsourced commercial use is what we're thinking of, or anything else there. Because you're gonna have a lot of traffic from the green, from events on the green, from Memorial Hall if it evolves, and all of a sudden, so therefore you have complementary kind of space that would help surge that traffic.
But it might be good just to conclude, and I don't mean to belabor the point, just since these are alternatives. And again, to stay within or less than the existing footprint, it would seem to suggest the other alternative of just retaining the building as it exists today without any expansions, since that was something we felt pretty strongly about too, I think.
Okay. All right, anything else? I'm going to move on then from this, but I think you're right. I think we.
It drives a lot of conversation.
Oh, yeah.
The only other thing I'd suggest is just again, this goes back to and I really like the idea of trying to have some sort of a cohesive, comprehensive historic district and define it as such, as part of the downtown, is when we talk about infrastructure and concerns of infrastructure, which always come up, particularly with respect to sewer, and whether or not there could be further consideration given to Madison opting into the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority, since clearly they have funds available, that's David Corr's group, funds available to assist communities in doing downtown development, so long as there's a residential component somehow affixed to it, right? But at least I just would say, again, not knowing what the board's mood is on that, but my
I
experience.
think at the end of the day, there has to be a decision about. Right, and that's what the debate is going to be. And, unfortunately, everything in the academy has never been about really planning. It's been, okay, we're going to here and look at this idea. It's traction. And then, it's sidetracked and learn another idea. So I think this holistic discussion is important. But, if we're going to decide to have more commercial economic development, then I think the RDA concept is there. Because I think the one thing that we heard, the board heard, was how people didn't really support housing. They didn't want the building turned into a private housing development, right? And so they wanted some opportunity for the community to be in the building, not just a room, but like access and utilization. And that's what the hotel, it was for commercial purposes, but there was a lot of amenities that the community would benefit from the building. So, and it would economically be beneficial. So if we did proceed with the hotel, there would be a possibility actually to do that, to talk to the state. But the issue we're wrestling with now, this is what we've been having a septic consultant look at, is we've just never really looked at the soils down. And they've never done a site analysis. It's always been like a building analysis of the use, never a site for the whole site with the true septic capacity is. And so, and that's what we're trying to come back with, that if we're going to have any kind of development down there, it's going to have to be a substantial investment in a deep regulated system at a minimum. It's going to require more soil throwing in, higher elevation. You're going to be tearing all the ball fields up anyway, right? You might put them back on top, but the whole site's going to have to be thought through in order to accommodate the septic needs.
What was the plan for the septic?
They did a perk test, I want to say.
Yeah, but they didn't look at the whole. So the
The academy design that was put out to bid, what was the plan for the septic?
that was one septic to serve that building, and that building had certain, I forget now, but uses for it, and they designed it to serve that building. But that they maxed that out basically, and that was based on assembly space, and different uses.
Or less use than a hotel
Yeah, a
or residential.
hotel, right, and then they could get some residential. But, there's another level of residential you couldn't have supported probably with the septic design. So, and then on top of that, we're in the academy process, we had wanted them to look at creating a shared system. While we're doing this, let's connect all the buildings, because they're making get old systems for the Morrison Hall and for the other buildings. But there was a point where we're like, you're on funding, you're on the time, right? So let's focus on academy and get the community center system designed. But now we take a step back, and I think anything that goes in there has to address the septic needs for the entire block. So now that you have a plan for the other buildings, because one of the things they said, well, what are you gonna do with these buildings? Well, so now if we have a plan for all the buildings, we have a plan for academy potentially, or not, we can kind of come up with a wastewater treatment plan for the whole site. So it's a, it's a challenge. So
I suggest we move forward, move on to the next topic, but I think that a general consensus of the committee would be helpful as we're kind of trying to drive our report to final. And it seems to me that I'd like to hear opinions on really two kind of core issues. One, that we kind of treat this area in a historical context, so that have a broader context of that all these things have to tie together to one another. From the academy through Royal Hall, all the way through John Graves, and we've got to think about all those buildings in that kind of preserving that historical context. And two, I think that the only logical way to present this academy kind of thought is only if the hotel concept doesn't go forward, or if, depending on what the Board of Selectmen, we have to kind of gauge it that this is really just an option. If something else doesn't happen, before you just start knocking it down, look at this. Please, as a one concept.
well, because it addresses what we have heard from the community and from a lot of different committees, the Historic District Commission, the Historic Preservation, right? I'm just saying, so if the hotel for various reasons decides not feasible, then there's a big push off from. And so there's still a lot of people that voice this once they're built, right? So this is kind of that alternate path.
I mean, because it preserves the historic front, which is
Right.
kind of what everybody has the emotional connection.
Well, when you say front though, so there's facade, but then you're talking about the front, the old historic building, because the back was added, right? So this is, right, so it's really the,
Right, we're just,
The
we're
core
those
historic
main
is-
doors on the east and
Yeah.
west side that,
Yeah.
to the staircases.
but I think it's important to differentiate that, because I think some people think facade, right? And they're just gonna create something behind
Disney.
that, which was, right? But this is actually preserving the original historic structure,
Yeah, the 1900s,
Yeah.
1910,
Right.
whatever it was.
right? And demolishing
So it
the.
was 1939 when they put the addition, that was about another 35,000 square,
Yeah.
30,000 square.
Well, and a clear case against demolition, because that really puts this huge gap in the historical fabric, right? It's gone.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right,
Yeah.
and the other side of it is that this would go back to, remember when we talked about Ryerson, we were trying to say, if you demolish part of Ryerson, what happens? And we had to solidify the walls and make them exterior walls that were interior walls, but you wouldn't have to have active, so you already have the exterior walls already in place.
Right.
So you basically just demoing to where the old exterior walls were. So anyway, so I think we have a consensus that that's the way we should kind of treat this at this stage as a, recommend this as a historical issue. We want to make sure that all these buildings tie together to preserve the historical nature of the block. But at the same token, this concept is really has to be set on the sidelines until the expression of interest runs its course. Is that a fair way to present
And
it?
I think also in fairness, though, to the other proposal that again came in second, it seemed there could be a comment that another option would be to revisit that idea of preserving, not necessarily with that developer, but preserving the building in its entirety, footprints in its entirety, which is still the thirties building still has historic features to it as well.
What would you do with that?
What would you do with the thirties building?
Yeah.
Pretty much, well, one option was what we heard from, one of the four proposers back in January, as far as creating. Well, I don't know if the apartments are going, I think there was some,
Marketplace.
with a marketplace with artisans, crafts people and, you know,
There was some more
Maker
housing
space.
and that there was.
yeah, so I mean, there were uses for it. More commercial, that's right.
The front, they're kind of the same concept of.
And then the first responder housing, I think, is smaller housing units. In the front.
It was in the middle.
Yeah, middle, okay. And that's right, and then the restaurant and stuff.
The restaurant and stuff was in the front, then the
Right.
gymnasium was the market. Right. It's how it was set up. But I mean, my only issue is that that's not a direction that the board of selectmen wanted to look at state because the
I think there was
concern on
concerns
housing,
about
so that.
well, the housing and the viability, because I think there's a view that, there's a fixed cost to fix that building, no matter what, right? And 15 million wasn't even enough. It was, so how it gets used is a small part of the cost of renovation. So if you're gonna have a sizable $1 million renovation, right, like, are you do that for an open space, say for a market, like you're not gonna generate enough revenue to help offset the cost of that.
Well, you are, because I think you could, Peggy, because if a private developer would do this, like, I think the hotel proposed and a couple others, you would qualify, because it is listed on the register, you qualify for
Get a lot
both
of
federal and
grants,
state.
right?
It covers well over half the development costs.
Well, I know, but there's a lot to discuss.
I think I'd like to
Yeah.
move on because I got a lot to do and I know people have some hard stops on here, coming up. Just one other thing on Memorial Hall. We have completed an economic analysis of the impact. So roughly the economic analysis, and I've shared it with the EDC, and they're reviewing it now, the document that we prepared to give us their opinion on it, but it seems that it's consistent with work they did for Academy, because they did a similar economic analysis for Academy. So it's roughly about $1 million of secondary information of things in the actual use. We were programming use of only about not even half time for kind of theater or event type use in Memorial Hall. So basically, we said 6 events between only 40 weeks a year. And the 6 events would happen basically Thursday through Sunday type of thing. So you have maybe 1 or 2 events on the weekends of that day and 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday kind of concept. So that came out and then basically you're leaving 12 weeks a year where nothing would be happening in the building that could be programmed for town use or chamber use or whatever they use it for all concepts and those kind of things. That came out and we did that at I believe 60% occupancy, and so that came up to roughly 28,000 attendees. And so we ran those numbers and basically we got this almost to break even. It's plus or minus $100,000 right at this stage. So we're working through that. That's going through, and I'll have a much more detailed analysis that we'll send out rather than going through that.
It's great though to put, as they say, put feet on the street. So having people there and having obviously then avail themselves of other goods and services, restaurants, et cetera, downtown.
Okay. We'll go through just so you know, we've gone through the Jeffrey as a revision after meeting with the folks at Board of Ed folks. Here. Okay, so, two things that have happened, and we went over this before, we got two potential sites for what we're, and these are just placeholders for a pool or some sort of gymnasium kind of concept. Share it over here. As well, so it's on both, so we have those two concepts, north and south. The south of Jeffrey is the most desirable from a site standpoint. I don't know how that would work. Other thing, that's what that was. We basically have flip-flopped the concept of youth and family services and board of ed. So we now have three options that we developed for Jeffrey, and they all basically still cost out the same way. So the board of ed would be in the north wing now, with their major conference room on the very end. So you would have public access that way, but not to all the offices and those kinds of concepts. The green would be, for youth and family services, and then the purple would be academic spaces. Here, we preserve the kind of idea of using the cafeteria for the culinary arts, and then an open meeting workspace, as well. That would be more public kind of concept space. We felt that that's kind of actually worked a little bit more effectively because youth and family services would take greater advantage of the courtyard a little bit more. Plus, it also would tie into some of the other classroom kind of functions and academic functions. And if they needed to do play kind of spaces and play workspaces, that kind of thing, the athletic or the old library and the gym might also tie into that. So it ties those things together a little bit more effectively. So that was the one option. The other option was, and then we've actually laid it out in terms of everybody's office and how these spaces are the proof of concept. The second option was to keep youth and family services on the north wing and board of ed in the middle, classrooms the same, that kind of concept. Third option was to look at putting in pre-K. And to do pre-K, put the pre-K in the north wing, youth and family services would be in the green, and then board of ed would be around the perimeter. And so that would be the third option. And again, all three options are basically the same cost for development, but I think the key thing is that you don't want to build this building out without filling it. You know, having knowing who's going to go, even though it may accelerate certain people's need to move, it's better to move it, have it filled, and have it occupied all at one time rather than delaying it. So we think this is the kind one of those three options makes the most sense. We're kind of leaning towards the first option of putting board of ed in the north wing, but the pre-K may be by the time we get all this moving, the pre-K may be a higher issue. So,
But this is the only option that includes the pre-K, right?
This is the only option that includes.
And alternatively, then, where was there any thought given? I forgot where else could pre-K go?
Well, right now it's going up to Brown and some of it's at
Yeah, they would just need more space.
It's all going up around next year.
So that's where it's going. This is anticipating the 5 to 7 classrooms that are needed 2 or 3 years from now, not that are needed today. Okay, so that's that. Then finally, EPA did for their assessment, they put together playing field options for us, which was at the suggestion of Teach and Rec. That Teach and Rec folks, their concept was to So the question was, could we create some sort of recreation space in North Mass? Because right now we don't have, everything is basically south of 95, all the recreation spaces that we have. You know, stop. Moving. I don't know why it's. I know. Right, so, okay, well, it's the guy, stop. So the basic concept was, could you get pickleball, tennis courts and the playing field there? So this is how they laid it out where, over the existing site of where Ryerson is. So we have, this is one recreation group, and basically the same size playing field, Little League field would go over at town campus learning center. Where that would fit, where if you remove those portables get removed, then that would also work there. So that was the concept of the land use for, and it's also then preserves that site potentially for a future school, 20 years from now. Kind of concept. So
Wait, I'm sorry.
this is Ryerson,
Right, but, where is the existing building now?
right where the
Home plate.
home plate
This is the existing.
parking lots and the buildings start.
Okay, so that would basically,
Yeah, when the building gets removed, that would.
so you wouldn't have the site available for school, because you have
Probably
this.
take out the tennis courts.
Yeah,
I'm sure, yeah.
you'd have the property, but it would be,
So it's where it's being located where versus like some of the ancillary land along here where it's switched.
This was one of the concepts that they asked.
Yeah,
to
I'm not
look
just trying
at.
to.
Yeah, so this is more of a concept I wanted to share, because this is new that came. Because the question was, could you even fit this here?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
answer is yes, it can fit. This is the kind of profile of course that
However,
pool could go in the same
Yeah.
spot. Yeah, you could put a pool there as well, but it seems that.
that's a bigger investment. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no,
I'm not advocating,
the
I'm just
question,
saying, go get asked.
the concept of the pool kind of got connected with the school's desire for a performance gymnasium for this senior varsity sports.
Yeah,
So they put those two together with common locker rooms, and then you get some economy of scale there. You build a pool that's a complete separate facility, then you're still building another that would be, so you'd actually pyramid your costs.
so one of the Jeffrey proposals is to addition of a pool.
Those were those two blue blocks on the site plan.
Okay,
We put a block.
Okay, just a block.
One over where on the
Okay.
Lesage property to see what on
Right.
the size and
I
then
see. So it
south
would
of
be down
Jefferson.
there.
So we thought that would make more sense because that's where all the kids are and wild people.
So it is addressed in the plan as a possibility.
Yes, that's a sighting, just a sighting. We haven't done any cost
Right.
around yet. It's a sighting.
Okay.
Option.
David, I'm having trouble reading the one with gray box to the right. Is that parking also, or what's that?
It's a detailed
That's where the
playground.
playground
So the
is.
existing playground stays.
And the ball field that would be south of that?
Yeah, this is the ball field.
We call it that. Who maintains that?
which one, the one,
The existing
School.
one. That's not-
oh, that's Beach Rec.
I agree we need more fields, but we'll maintain ones we have. Fortunately. That field that's down there is not really unplayable. The one behind Brown's not.
No, they don't really. Sorry, it's the school, right? Are they scheduled?
No, they
for
use-
practices
they use the,
sometimes?
There's the one that's down by Ryerson, they use a lot for, soccer. And then the one behind, Brown, they use for soccer and Little League now.
So right now, though, I'm sure Austin shared with you, the consultant is going through a field assessment.
Right.
Of all fields.
Mhm.
So,
And then he just asked,
Yeah.
is it possible?
yeah,
And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm sharing with him, that yes, this is, we looked at it, this is a potential option.
Right.
Not recommendation one way or the
Yeah.
other, it's just a potential option.
And then to your other statement about the high school and the pool and the performing arts area. How many students go to high school?
In high school now,
Yes.
shy 800,
And how many was it designed for?
1,200.
So there's a boatload of space in that building. Potentially be carved out, renovated. One of those functions was the addition.
I don't think right now, I mean, we're at low enrollment right now, it's gonna go back up, and I think each of those rooms, it just depends on what you choose for class size too, right? So, I don't know if you could carve out,
Just feels funny adding
yeah,
on to a school that's.
Well, what it is that the varsity sports play at
Yeah, no,
Olson, there's not a gym, there's not an actual. And that was the one of the two things that got tagged on the review of the school system, the state review, was that there was a gymnasium for the high school.
it was all one part,
Sure.
well, they'll be about 20.
Yeah, that,
We'll have a full, right,
so, yeah. Okay. So with that, I distributed, I'll move on, if there's no other comments on that, I'll move on to the next conversation. We put together a draft that I've circulated for everyone. In the hopes that we can start thinking about it. We committed back in January or February at the Board of Selectmen meeting, our annual report to have something done by the end of May, maybe early June. It was April to June concept. So I'm trying to keep us on schedule for those areas. So the core question is basically, it's very hard to draft a report by committee. So basically, we want to.
Can I, just maybe step back for a second before, because I think the, couple things. One is the Surf Club master plan is also on the same time, right? And we're actually gonna get it Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen of the concepts. I think it's gonna be 2 concepts of the Surf Club master plan. And then we're gonna actually, I wanted to invite a bunch of relevant committees. We're gonna have a public information session on June 10th. We're trying to find the time to have that presentation. I think it's important that this committee sees that. If you can't see it Tuesday night, you watch the video or attend the public information session, because that deals with public, so you understand what's in that building, like what they're talking about, the uses. So trying to, and then the fields discussion that we just had, like that all has to get pulled in there somehow. And I think, making sure that we're kind of like, and then the DPW discussion, right, this, because we can't do any of this plan without having building and grounds with that in there. Because that space is gonna be used for other things, so just saying, like, I think we need to.
Well, that in our work,
Yeah.
we accommodated
Yeah.
and grounds at.
Yeah,
at the
but I
footpath.
think also like understanding too what's being proposed with the Surf Club. So I think it's important before any kind of final report is done that you have the opportunity to look at that. Like, we probably want to adopt a final Surf Club plan until the end of the summer. We're gonna get public feedback, have visions. But I think you guys should be in tune with what's going on there, right? Because I think that's important. And then the other thing that, longer term, I think what we're gonna talk about this Tuesday night is this plan, when it is finalized, kind of endorsed by the committee, at least, and then we'll go to the Board of Selectmen. And the Surf Club master plan, we're gonna put together we're basically gonna reconvene CIP. This is what I hope to do. I'm gonna be talking to because there needs to be priority setting, right? And sequencing of all this. There's a lot of, people are scared of all the dollars. They're like, we're not gonna go out next year and bond, $150 million to get everything done, right? So there's gonna have to be how do we fund this? What's our sequence? What's priority? And it was very successful when the school district did it for the tri-board, right? They created a tri-board. And they went through and they looked at all the plans, they got public input, they had workshops, and they came up with the master plan that passed ultimately for bonding. So I think the goal is to kind of get towards that. But probably use our CIP committees, because that has 2 members of each elected board, and then, so that is where, I think this will get fed into that, as part of that thinking, and then how that sequences and works in and how it pairs with the master plan will be discussed in the fall. And so we're gonna talk about that, and if you have any thoughts, to share, it won't, not tonight necessarily, to think about that a little bit, but, we'll be talking about that at the Thursday meeting. The board of selectmen, to see how that all kind of plays out, because I know you have your phase, your sequencing, right? You have your budget that doesn't impact or doesn't include all the other expenses and the capital plan itself out too. In it. Because like the CIP plan has the W project in it, but it's nothing for the CERT club, and the CERT club's gonna come back with, probably phases.
Yeah, we don't know how
Yeah.
these things are coordinated. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's part of the CIP monies would help support like the Jeffrey revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, the roof replacement at Jeffrey and some of the mechanicals and those kind of things. So funding off some funding support from the CIP program for these, in
Yeah, and that's
Memorial
where I think
Hall,
the sequence,
the
some of
things
it's
that
gonna
you
be
don't want to
bonded,
get.
some of it's gonna be CIP,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how they did the school renewal plan. I think there's some big conclusions that come just right out of the gate, says we wanna keep Jeffrey. The board's decided to tear down Ryerson, it voted on it last month, so that's proceeding, and they have the funding in place already to take care of that. Academy's an outlier, we don't know. But having Jeffrey as, okay. There's I guess I'm thinking like a decision tree, right? Somehow we have to have this decision tree. Board decides this, then this, and this happens, right?
Well, if Jeffrey happens, then then about 6 dominoes fall.
Yeah,
So then all of a sudden you start thinking of Chapel, Memorial Hall, as well as here, as well as town campus. So all those things get impacted.
and the public though might say, I care more about surf club right now. Let's keep this to the side, let's focus on, what I mean, that's where that's gonna be a big discussion. It's a lot to sequence, it's a lot to prioritize, but.
I guess the big thing that I'm taking away from it, this is, I have my own personal opinion, is that, doing these various community meetings, people like the comprehensive type of look, where you're looking at all these things and how things are integrated. They are also very much in favor of not letting a building die on the vine. So that if you're gonna do something with Jeffrey, let's get it going. Let's not let that building go into the deterioration kind of column like Academy did. So those kind of 2 things are important, but once you do that, you gotta recognize that we're opening the gate on several other things
Right.
where you have to, where they all have to move.
Yeah.
Now,
And I don't
Just-
think you wanna see the competition going between the 2 plans, I guess that's the other thing, so I feel like this is gonna get all integrated in a sequence, phase 1 is surf club, then maybe Jeffrey, then, you know what I mean? I think that's how I think we're gonna have to
so
approach
the
it.
core question in my mind that I wanted to have this discussion tonight is not to solve the problem, but how do we present where we are? And honor our commitment to the selectmen that we're presenting our findings at this stage. Even though there are, I would say we're at probably at 80-90% kind of confidence level with most of the stuff, excluding anything for Academy. Everything else, I think we have pretty well run on the ground. I mean, we've had cost estimators looking at these things. We've had structural engineers, we've had mechanical engineers, architects, so, across the board on these major projects. So that I think we have some reasonable cost estimates that are there. If anything, they're conservative, I think. And so the core question is, how do we proceed? Preparing I think a written document is needed. I would like to get a subcommittee of this group together that can go over this document and kind of work it through its presentation and ultimately coming out to a document that makes sense. It's impossible to write a document with a not an 8-person committee.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. But
That's a really good job, actually. I think, oh, wish I had those.
so that's the big thing, and then what would be our time frame for putting it, and then what's the sequence? Because I think, in general, my ideas are just from my experience that, basically things stall over the summer, because people don't get busy. So I'd like to make sure we get this in front of the Board of Selectmen before the end of June. And then it gets on the agenda for late summer, early fall for ongoing discussions. Because once it gets past December, January, everything's going to slow down because it's an election.
I mean, I would argue that, I think our meeting in June, the last meeting's on the 22nd. That would be bad timing because now we have gone through the surf club plan. We are hopefully having a public information session on the 10th to hear back from the public about that. And then we can have this in June. We're talking about our process to kind of bring this all together and organize. And then my goal is to then have this, September, October launch of the how do we prioritize all this, the paper kind of plan, right? So that would work.
Okay. And part of the paying is the appropriate. I agree about. I'd like to have a little deeper conversation with Bob Reinhardt on our financing. I did have a conversation with Bob Donahue on the kind of thinking of the financing and stuff, because part of our financing is if any of the development is selected, that's all not big enough. But if it's selected, you could use the tax revenues for development to kind of fund bonding for some of these major things without having an impact on people's tax bills. So the expanded grant list can be a benefit on there. So that's part of the incorporation of our thinking. Plus, I do think that by cataloging the green area as a historic district, that also opens up a whole opportunity of both fundraising as well as grant opportunities for us. And that perspective. But yeah, I think that's fine. If we be on the agenda for the 22nd, we should be ready. Our meeting is the 22nd, Monday. So I think our next meeting is the 24th, on the following Thursday. Or it might be the previous.
It's 18th.
18? 18.
Third Thursday, 18th.
So basically, I'd like to get, I know you're probably very busy, but that's something, if at all possible, the writing of the document, or at least the editing of the document.
I'd be able to have my comments, because the other thing I was kind of like happy to see, so I'd be happy to provide some comments.
Yep.
And one piece I just want to mention when I was looking at it, is I think it would be helpful to have this overlay of the goals of the strategic plan and POC, which how this all kind of ticks some things there, some sort of one page, that's something I can kind of help think through a little bit, but how again affordable, how we have all these other plans. And this plan addresses a lot, right? Affordable housing plan.
Yeah, affordable.
Like, this isn't out of the blue. And I think there's been some comments at times about like, this is like not, and I'm like, no, this is being driven by over for the community. Through the strategic planning process and through the POCD process, right? Not all of it, but chunks of it. So, and it does kind of,
Well, it deals with the CIP program,
Yeah.
how you maintain the buildings, how you modernize the buildings. We've brought in program issues. A lot of things that were brought up from
Yeah.
the various academy committees that over
So I
time.
think, you know,
Yeah.
some way to kind of open up the conversation about why, once again, why we're doing this, but also, and I know you had some good narrative.
So it's almost like a
on that.
matrix, that's, like,
Yeah.
these were the various goals of these various
Yeah.
committees and
Yeah,
what we're, how much of our plan.
and how this is, you know, whether it's like moons or whether it's whatever stars, but like saying, this really helps with this and this. And then I think maybe I would like the staff, or like I was thinking at least town planner to review it, like giving that planning over, like how this is good because of like, she knows that they just finished the POC, so it should be good.
Right.
So having a staff review of this probably early June is possible, just we could send a draft and then have a, you know, with some committee members who just do a quick meeting with the staff, you know, I can set something up during the day, whoever.
Yep.
To get feedback, I think it would be important to get their views, you know, they all have their own priorities, right? And then you've got, obviously, Peter's here, right, to weigh in, and he's part of the team, but, I think that would be a good thing to have.
And I invited Charmaine to join us tonight, because of, I was having real trouble just because there's so much information here and I asked her to join us as to provide some fresh eyes, and she was so kind to kind of look at everything and kind of from a fresh eye standpoint, how would you
Right.
set it up and how would you organize it?
Yeah.
So she's been very helpful in terms of just another resource. So it's been-
I mean, I think it speaks really well, I just think we refine it, add some stuff, maybe like the academy piece, kind of carve that out a little bit differently, you know. So,
And maybe to your point, Peggy, in the abstract, maybe talk about the fact that what we're doing here is going to be thoughtfully integrated into a much larger context,
Yeah.
something like that in the abstract, so that people aren't offended and that there's greater understanding that we recognize this as an integrated sort of process that we're doing here with other boards and commissions.
yeah. Yeah, versus kind of siloed off, right?
Yeah, because we've met with affordable housing, we've met with the
Yeah.
EDC, you know.
And that might be
obviously,
worth part of the narrative, this has been, you know, in terms of all the different groups that you work with. I know whenever we will work with these consultants, they always go through and list like all the different, you know, sources. But I mean, you guys have really hit a lot, because you've also done a lot of things. I think to be
Now we've met,
organized.
I think 14
Yeah,
stations, and they've probably averaged 15 to 20 people in every one, maybe
Yeah.
30 in some of them. So,
yeah, there was a lot of community, you know, feedbacks. Then there'll be more, because the biggest thing is going to be there and on the costs, right? And I think, to me, the focus should be on cost as much as the vision, right? The next phase is where we'll talk more about that, what from the for learning how to work, right?
well, but don't you believe that, I mean, we need to have some sort of reality check, that order of magnitude, this is not crazy stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is all financially doable without raising everybody's taxes by 20%. That's the bill, you know, because I mean, as I was looking at it, even if you didn't know develop, I did some back of the envelope calculations that bonding of what we've identified, the about $170 per $500,000 assessment impact on taxes. So, you know, so we got it down, and if you do development, it as low as, I think it was as low as $42 or something like that, per $500,000 in assessment. So, you know, that, you know, it's not a,
For the construction costs, but then there's the, you know, that's where I think we'll have to put some thinking in terms of the carrying costs, you know, staffing, buildings, so. That was a big controversy on Academy, because it was the carrying costs in addition to the bonding costs, right? It was in the capital.
we've done that for Memorial Hall. We haven't
Yeah.
done it yet for Jeffrey.
Yeah.
But on the same token, Jeffrey's a building that you're maintaining now, and
Right,
so,
Right.
you know, so it's kind of already in the budget to some degree.
well, now it's pretty light, all right, but, you know,
Almost too
having.
light, yeah, almost too light,
Yeah, well, right now it's
Keeping the light.
Just, yeah, keeping some general, utilities running, things like that, so it's, but back to the point that we don't want this sitting there for 10 years,
Right.
So,
Well, I think the biggest thing I took away from all those community meetings was people want to change the cycle of planning, stop the planning. Everybody's just has planning fatigue, right? What was the word hearing from people? And that basically they're saying having something that ties in these pieces together and to moving makes sense, and that it's like just not dragging things on and just having one project come up and having just talking about that one project was what people really disliked about past. So, and with in general, the community feedback has been extremely strong across the board. It's everything from the men over 60 to the Republicans and Democrats. I mean, we had it's thrown to the wolves in a couple of different places, so it's pretty good.
men over 60 could be pretty tough food, because
We
I
had a lot of fun. Dave and I were there. We had a lot of fun with that. I think we fit in. We fit in with the group, so it's okay.
We're on the under end. On the under end.
minority in that room, I'm the only one that was 60. So that's like,
Yeah.
this is over.
But I mean, probably the two most vocal that took the most time with the JCs and Rotary.
Yeah.
And Exchange. I mean, all those three all really had lots of questions.
Had a lot to say.
They had a lot to say.
And it was good.
And yeah, very, very helpful.
Back to the point about how exhaustive has been the desire to get input from the different groups and organizations. Do we want to create an appendix? You've got them already. Want to create yet another appendix that cites, acknowledges who else was, where we sought this input, where we received it, so that again shows everyone that this was a thoughtful attempt at outreach to gain a variety of opinions from different stakeholders.
Well, and I think that the step after the Board of Selectmen sees this is we will probably have a public hearing at one point. And I would think that, because we're not gonna just adopt it, they're gonna have some board members that's fine, and right, so we're gonna have to talk about that. How do we want to modify the plan, as a board, do we not, do we want to just accept it as a recommendation and then take it to the public and let's hear what they say, So that will be a thing we'll have to think a little bit about the next steps after the board gets the final recommendation. So, because I do feel like there should be a public, or even the comment chime in. Yeah.
Right, so process, but a couple more minutes left before we close down. I'd like to get at least one or two people to volunteer to help me with this writing of this, the documentation. I think, well, I'm hoping Charmaine would be good, hopefully willing to be part of our writing group.
How can I say no?
I need one other person to be part of that.
Thank you.
Oh,
If I could get one other volunteer on that, that would be very helpful.
I'll start there.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to do like an overview, critical review of it.
Yep. Great. So my view would be to get this. I'd like to basically, next week's the holiday going on, basically the next 10 days, get everybody's comments and of the review. I mean, I think before we do the writing over the next, maybe by next Thursday, could I get people read what you have, make comments, and get that back to us so that we can redirect. Okay? Does that work?
Yeah, I think that.
I think
you're looking.
Yeah.
I'm just here looking like just concepts, ideals, bullet points, order of things, and then we can discuss what works and then put the narrative back into it.
Correct.
Whatever. You're not looking for full report type.
I mean, when you read through the report, I'd love for people to read through the report and say, no, I don't want this in the report, or yes, this makes more sense, or
I think it's important.
this is, too very deep in the report, it needs to be brought up. I mean, where's your sense of priority? Where's your sense of what you like, what you don't like? I mean, there's no private authorship here. It's all about what's gonna work best for, we've been working for 2.5 years on this, and, the amount of work that everybody in this community has done is awesome, and I want it recognized in this report. The value of this report reflects the effort that has gone into this, and I think it helps set the stage for plans for the future. And I think it has the potential for very impactful on our town. That's my hope. So we'll do that, and then once we'll redraft it, get it in front of the committee, then we can start meeting with town folks on drafting, and then we'll kind of have the report, well, as a summary slide deck, which kind of goes back to what Charmaine was talking with, the key bullet points, key things that we want to emphasize with the board of selectmen in the presentation. 20 seconds.
One question I had, just in doing a very brief read of it, it just seemed as though there were some pieces that were of things said earlier. I'm just wondering if we should be looking at being more concise, or if there's a way to kind of.
My thought was most people aren't going to read past the executive summary. So basically I said, this is what you're going to tell them again, and then this is what you told them.
Okay.
So that was kind of
that was
my
the intent.
approach to the report. So kind of executive summary, kind of put everything in at the higher level, and so you get a read through it, you get a whole sense of it, and then the body of the report actually gets into the nuts and bolts of what we looked at, all the things we've uncovered. The recommendations get repeated again there, so and then you kind of all the appendices get attached at the end that shows how we got there. So that was the overall philosophy behind my approach.
One just quick note on page 2, where it talks about what to do or what the whole purpose is. One of the things that seemed obvious by its absence was no mention of the possibility of disposition, of sale of an asset rather than reuse. Maybe I missed it, but the way it read, I just want to be clear that one other option might be that, if we don't need it anymore, let's sell it. Whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I think we put that in the body.
It's somewhere in
language side.
It is
In
later
the
on.
detail later on.
But if it could be in the summary, it just seems like disposition or whatever the word is you want to use, sale of an asset.
Since that was one of the parts of the charge we had was, did we keep it all and something be sold or something?
Right.
Well, and I think you've already highlighted, like, well, I guess demolition Ryerson, that was a TCLC and different than selling it. I guess some of the parcels of your somewhere in here, as remember we did that strategic value for different things. Was there like a chart that we had done? I feel like that should be there, how we reviewed everything and said this has strategic value because it's adjacent to other town property. There's some key things that drove that.
We did it when we were doing we did like a matrix.
Yeah, I think that would be because that did drive why can't we just sell off Jeffrey and the Osage, because that's going to come up. We should just sell off all that property, right? And why wasn't that considered, and what was the value if we sold it? So
because we said at the outset, we said adjacencies, strategic adjacencies for we wanted to preserve.
Yeah.
And that
was
drove us to
fundamental
identifying Ridge
assumption.
Road, for example, as a property that doesn't have as much strategic value, doesn't have very much at all, but then something that could either be sold and developed or developed. No.
And maybe listening earlier on that these were considered strategic value assets that shouldn't be disposed of. My demo, the building that's on it, don't want to get rid of the property.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right. Yeah.
No, it's so anything open up for public comment? I don't know if we have anybody on.
We have one person online. They do not have their hand raised, so hold on a minute. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, how are you
Robert?
guys? Robert Letskis, 32 Hathaway Lane. Just wanted to call and give a couple of comments here because I was in listening to everything, and I applaud this committee's efforts. I've said this, 100 times in the past. I mean, the hundreds of hours you guys have put in has been, outstanding, and I really applaud your efforts for that. When I'm looking at the overall scope and the master plan of the entire academy area, I'm looking at your vision and I understand it completely. And what it's telling me is that the consultants are starting to finally realize that, the feasibility of adding on to the building is it's kind of looking like there's not a lot of confidence in that. That's why I left the building as is. So, just taking a look at it, I just wanted to let you guys know that I am still interested, and it is something that I would love to pursue. Just, whatever it is, I will back up and support 100%, whether it's the smaller version, my version, or a larger version. I'm a team player, but it's just kind of looking to me like maybe the consultants are having, they think that there's a different, it doesn't seem like it blends in with the historic significance of the area. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other hands raised, Peter?
That's it.
All right, well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter.